Don't start.
I am going to start because this is how we start every time, with a little bit of a giggle and a little bit of a laugh. Welcome to the Cat and Sam show. How you doing there, Sam?
I'm good. All the better for seeing you as ever. How are you?
I'm pretty good. It's a nice kind of sunshiny day where I am.
Yeah, it's bright, cold,
and I don't know. I was thinking today, maybe we could talk about when you recognize somebody's in trouble out in society, like at our workplace or a friend or just out in public, and maybe what our responses are to seeing that in society, so others can maybe, I don't know, help.
Yeah.
When they see somebody and go, oh, well, that's what that is. And maybe that'll help
I think
a little
also,
bit. What are your thoughts?
Well, the thing, I think it's really, really difficult for other people around you to know what to do, how to do it, what's the right thing to do, and understanding that actually sometimes the last thing you should do is try and just get somebody out of a situation or force the issue in some way. It's actually counterintuitive, but a lot of people say like staying in it is the safest place. I often think of that saying, keep your friends close and your enemies closer. This is the kind of scenario where that actually I understand what that means, because instinctively I think most people who targets and stuff who are experiencing this kind of abuse and living with it know that actually just instinctively that leaving is going to be an exceptionally dangerous time, and that's something that needs planning, it needs care. But I think I think it's also a thing in your brain of like, when you think about it, to actually sit there and say, or have somebody say to you, this is what's going on. In a way, that's when that can only come, I think, when you're going to go, because you can't carry on living in it. I don't know. What do you think? It's no wonder it's confusing for everybody else, because I think it's confusing for us when we're in it. It's really tricky, I think. And like you were talking, it's hand holding, isn't it? And it's being now. I just when somebody, even when they come to me, I like what you said, you hold space for them.
Right.
I'm not actually doing anything other than being there ready for when they're ready. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I think you don't get too tied up into it, but it's very loose in your response. I think if you're trying to help somebody, it's not, I'm going to be there and I'm going to, just as soon as they're ready, I'm ready and all that. It's not like that. It's, to me, I feel like that the research was that they couldn't get people out because they wouldn't leave. Mm. And so they started to, here in the States, they started to just take them out. And then the state would prosecute, and they lost the ability to prosecute. And that way, the person that was being prosecuted wouldn't have a retaliation going towards the person. It would be towards the state.
Okay.
That's what their thought process was. It didn't work. People were getting hurt more because it wasn't about them having power over the state or the state having power over them. Their activity is about having power over that person. Yeah. So what they've come to that I've found out or learned is that you have to let the person decide, because in all the safety, it's about what your gut is telling you in how to be safe. Because each individual situation calls for an understanding of how you can be safe in that environment. Because you've learned it, you've been living it, you're still living it. And so you have an idea as that target as to how I can protect myself from this situation. And so you kind of have to let them lead.
Because the victim, the person,
as to how they,
the person who's experiencing
as to
it
how to leave,
is has the most knowledge and the most, they know how to manage, they've learned how to manage their situation to keep themselves alive. So they are the ones with the expertise in what their particular situation requires.
Right. And I think it's going to be frustrating to the person that's not in it. And that is the nature of the beast. And that's why you want to hold on loosely and let them lead. And if they say they want to go, then help them in planning what they need to go, in doing a little bit of research, maybe calling a safe house and talking to them about, you have this friend or somebody who is in need, and what that looks like for them. It can be as difficult as somebody who's got a family member who's had a gun pulled on them. Your response to that and how to help them is going to be different than somebody who's being verbally assaulted all the time and, let's say, kept from going for mental health.
Yeah.
So, your response may be like, well, I know these 800 numbers you can call, or these free toll-free numbers that you can call in order to get that mental health. And I know these applications that they have a way to go out of them quickly if you're looking on your phone, and they aren't traced. There's just many avenues to look at, and that's where they kind of need society's help, I think, because they're just trying to survive. They're just trying to make it through the day. And so they can't, strategically think about things to get out. They're just trying to make it through that day.
And I just had a thought whilst you were talking. And actually it's linked to another video that we've done about illness. But it's like, if somebody's ill, if somebody's poorly, we don't assume that we know exactly what it is and the best way to treat it, or to treat it ourselves. You up to a point, but what you do is either help somebody to look after themselves, say in the home, but you're there for them if they need you, or take them to a hospital, or help them get to a hospital, or but knowing that they've maybe got lots of other things to organise before they could go even to A&E or something. So it literally just popped into my head then that actually maybe that is a way to look at it, is like it's a sickness, or put it in the context of a sickness, in the sense of not the victim, but but that what's going on is like a sickness, and to think that might help people to think, well, what would I do? Well, sort of the same, I suppose, kind of the same thing, maybe.
Well, we talked about it in when we were talking about COVID and isolation, and there's so many things that's happening to a person that is stuck in that. They've been isolated. They've had their voice taken from them. They've been broken down to not believe that they can even voice an opinion that's different than the person that is causing them such issue.
There can be a lot of lack of nutrition, lack of water. There's all of food, water, all of the sleep deprived. All of these things are physically going on. So for the brain to be functioning at optimum level, but that's what I've been trying to think of when we're trying to explain to people or help people to grasp. I often find it useful to take it out of the context that it's in and put it in something else. That's just me. It's just the way my brain works. And it literally just came to me then that if somebody is poorly, that's I think that can help contextualize how to be around somebody. Maybe be interesting to know what people think.
Well, I absolutely agree with you. I mean, I think, as a person helping, you're not going to have all the answers. Even...
And that's okay. It's okay,
And that... Exactly. And I think, the reason survivors are so helpful, I think, is because we've been through it. We have some ideas about it. We lived it. People with book smarts think they have all these answers. And while they may know some terminology that may help a survivor to be able to go, yeah, that's what that is. And this is how it felt for me. If the person with the book knowledge doesn't know it well enough to be able to help them, I don't know, it goes into, I'm thinking kind of outside of a little bit, but even like with mental health, if you get mental health people that aren't understanding of what abuse looks like and how to help, they're of no help. A lot of practices that are done are still practicing like they did in the 70s and 80s, and they're not progressing up into the knowledge that we have now about what that is.
I had a...
I'm saying?
I completely. And funnily enough, I had a conversation with somebody, supporting somebody the other day, and their abuse has been partner abuse, but also from childhood. So, and loads of therapy and things like that. I said, well, have you ever looked at the abuse rather than fixing the person? So the medication and therapy about what she can do to make her life better and all these interventions and stuff. But it doesn't seem like they've ever actually looked at the dynamics of the abuse for her or helped her to really process it. And she, intellectually, she completely gets it. She was very, very keen to, know what can I do next so I don't feel this way. But it was all very much about what she needed to do and how she needed to do it, and that it was her failure if she wasn't getting better. And to me, as a layperson now, but also with my understanding, it's like, well, the first thing you need to be talking about is the trauma of the abuse and how that would impact you, rather than going, oh, that was something from way long ago. It seemed quite odd to me that hadn't been something that had been looked at for her. But I think that's quite often what can happen. You'll get a label, like we said before, and that's what's dealt with. I'm not saying that that's in itself is a problem, but I think domestic abuse especially, and if it's domestic abuse that children are embroiled in, whether they just witness it or I mean, they don't just witness, but however they're
I don't even know how you get around that.
There's still this hangover that once you're away from that person, that's the abuse is done and over, and it's really strong. It does seem to sort of stick to domestic abuse in such a way that in other contexts, those same kinds of abuses seem to be understood, and the impact and the lingering quality of it. But there is still just this thing that, I suppose it comes from the physical aspect, doesn't it? That once somebody's not there to thump you, that's it, you're fine. So I suppose
people just aren't educated.
All part and parcel of that understanding of all the other stuff that goes with it, which is why we're here, isn't it? I suppose. Yeah.
Right, because people just don't understand that it's still going on, and how that look. I mean, look at the rapes that happen, and if you don't have a bunch of pictures or you don't have a bunch of information, or you're not a perfect victim, then people were, she dressed that way, so she was asking for it. All the crap that came along that is finally getting kind of handled through rape culture. And I think that's the same kind of, thought process here. And
it's still happening here. So David Carrick, this policeman, there's 12 victims. He's being sentenced today and tomorrow in court. 85 admitted offences over 17 years, or whatever it is. And even still, the barristers and the people who are the prosecutors, the prosecution side, and they're still saying, oh, well, all of these women were vulnerable. Some were older, some were younger than him. All of them were vulnerable in some way. The only reason they were vulnerable is because he was a predator.
Right,
there were people in his work, there were other officers in his workplace that he attacked and raped, and they didn't say anything because of the culture of the police. But, if you're with a chap who's a few years older or a few years younger, that doesn't make you vulnerable as a woman. And the idea that somehow, we're all going to have these sort of deep-seated insecurities, we don't.
Yeah,
it's just, and so even now, even today, they're still repeating some of that nonsense. There's no excess vulnerability about these women, other than he targeted them as intentionally as a predator, and knew exactly how to do it, what to do, and used his role as a police officer from the very, very instant he met them to incur trust in him, to enable him to abuse them. It drove me a bit nuts today, that actually. I just thought,
Well, I mean, that's why we do what we do, is to kind of break these up and break them apart and look inside and go, how can you help that situation? And I think in order to tie this one up, I'm thinking that, we have to listen to the target. We have to let them be the lead in how they run their life. It is their life. And we don't have all the answers. They do, as far as how it is that they need to run it. And I liked how you tied that in with the illnesses, and we have to have some care and compassion going towards people who are suffering, and they are suffering.
Absolutely. And and you've mentioned before that, I suppose in the same way you wouldn't criticize somebody because they're ill, for victims and targets to not be criticized, for us, like you say, to be treated with compassion and with an enabling, when you're in these situations, all of your choices taken away from you. So actually, to start to believe that you can make a choice again, it's about supporting them to make that choice and not take that choice from them, because in the long run, that's what will enable their recovery, I think, as well. So I agree with what you're saying.
And you're right. Oh God, I lost the word. But the research shows that the biggest point of safety for the target is for them to listen to their gut and to know where they need to go. And you need to let them lead.
And support
them. And I think that's,
them.
Where we should tie off, right?
Support them.
Like you would a sick person, like you said. You don't have all the answers.
No.
You take them to a doctor.
Yeah.
All right, we'll see you on the other side.
See you in a bit.
I love.
Now, if you like our content, please comment, like, subscribe, share, and if you want to see some more, you have to hit that bell down there below. So you can check us out on Patreon or on your favourite podcast servers, providers, whatever. So we would like to see you there if you'd like to see us.